It was a sunny afternoon in the city park. Families sat together under trees. Children laughed and played, and the smell of food filled the air. Among them sat a little girl, around 10 years old, wearing an oversized dress that looked worn out but clean. She had spread a small old cloth on the grass, and on it were 3 empty plates. From a distance, it looked like she was having a picnic, but if anyone looked closely, they would see there was no food at all. The girl smiled softly, pretending to scoop food with an invisible spoon. She talked to the air as if someone was sitting beside her. To those passing by, she looked like a happy child enjoying her day. But in truth, she was pretending to eat, pretending not to be hungry, and pretending that life was normal. A few meters away, an older man sat quietly on a park bench. He wore a simple suit, but anyone could tell he was someone important, calm, well-groomed, and confident. He often came to this park for peace, away from his busy office and endless meetings. That day, however, something about the little girl caught his attention. He noticed her cheerful smile and the way she lifted the spoon as if sharing an invisible meal. At first he thought maybe her parents were nearby, but after a while he realized she was alone. He kept watching silently, wondering why a child would pretend to eat like that. As the minutes passed, he saw her take out a small folded note from her pocket and place it on one of the empty plates. Then she whispered something as if saying grace and carefully folded her hands. The man's heart grew heavy. There was something about the way she sat there, polite, gentle, yet clearly hiding pain. After a while, she stood up, gathered her things, and began walking away slowly. She left the note behind on the cloth beside the empty plates. The man hesitated for a moment, then stood up and walked toward the spot. The plates were old, cracked, and clearly used many times before. He picked up the note carefully, unsure if he should read it, but something inside him urged him to. The note was written in a child's handwriting, a little shaky, but full of emotion. It said, "Dear Mama, I brought your favorite plates again. I know you liked picnics here. I couldn't bring food because we don't have any today, but I hope you can still see me and smile. I miss you every day. Please tell God to send some food for me and Grandma. Love you always." The man froze. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. The words felt like a punch to his heart. He looked around, searching for the girl, but she was already gone. He stood there in silence, the sound of laughter and birds fading behind him. The note shook in his hand. He could hardly believe what he had just read. A child so young, pretending to eat just to feel close to her mother. It was something he couldn't imagine. He sat down again, staring at the empty plates. The afternoon sun began to set, painting the sky orange and gold. He realized he had spent his entire life chasing money, meetings, and luxury, but he had never seen something as pure as that moment. A little girl's love for her late mother had touched him deeper than anything else ever could. When he finally left the park, he carried the note with him. That night he couldn't sleep. The image of the little girl kept returning to his mind. Her smile, her small hands pretending to eat, her empty plates filled only with memories. The next day, he decided to return to the park, hoping to find her again. He wanted to know her story, to understand why she had to live like that. Something inside him told him that this meeting wasn't just chance, maybe it was fate. Maybe, in some strange way, life had brought him there for a reason. As he walked back to the same spot, he noticed a few people gathered near the benches. The little cloth was gone, but the ground still held the marks of where she had sat. He waited quietly, scanning the park, hoping to see her familiar face appear again. He didn't know what he would say when he found her, but he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't ignore what he saw. That one small act, a child pretending to eat beside empty plates, had awakened something deep inside him. Something he hadn't felt in years, compassion. And in that moment, he silently promised himself, if he found that little girl again, he would change her life forever. The next morning, the man returned to the same park. The note he had found yesterday was still folded neatly in his coat pocket, its words echoing in his mind. He sat on the same bench and looked around, hoping to see the little girl again. For hours he waited, watching every child who passed by, but she didn't come. As the day went on, he began to wonder if maybe she would never return, but something inside him refused to give up. So he started asking a few of the people who regularly visited the park. An old fruit seller who had a small cart near the entrance nodded when the man described the girl. "Yes, I've seen her," the fruit seller said softly. "She comes here almost every afternoon. She never buys anything, but she always smiles and says hello. Sometimes she collects the apples that fall on the ground." The man thanked him and waited again the next day. This time around noon, he finally saw her, walking slowly toward the same tree with the same old cloth in her hands. She looked tired but cheerful. The man's heart ached seeing her so innocent yet burdened with something far too heavy for a child. He watched her set the cloth on the grass, arrange the 3 empty plates again, and place a small bunch of wildflowers on one of them. She closed her eyes for a few seconds as if whispering a prayer. Then she began pretending to eat once more just like before. This time the man couldn't stay seated. He took a deep breath, stood up, and walked toward her gently so he wouldn't startle her. When he got closer, the girl looked up surprised. "Hello there," he said softly. "May I sit here?" She hesitated for a moment, then nodded shyly. He sat beside her, trying to smile warmly. "That's a nice picnic you have here," he said, looking at the empty plates. The girl looked down, her small fingers playing with the edge of the cloth. "It's just pretend," she whispered. "Mama liked picnics, so I come here to remember her." The man felt his throat tighten. "That's very sweet of you," he said quietly. "I read the note you left yesterday. I hope you don't mind. I didn't mean to invade your privacy." She shook her head. "It's okay," she said softly. "I left it for Mama. Maybe you were meant to read it." Her voice was calm, but her eyes held sadness beyond her age. The man asked gently, "Do you live nearby?" She nodded. "A little far near the old train station. I live with my grandma. She's sick, so I take care of her." He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Do you go to school?" She shook her head again. "I used to, but after Mama went to heaven, Grandma couldn't pay for school anymore. It's okay, though. I like reading books from the library when they let me." The man's heart broke a little more with every word she said. This small child, and sitting under the warm sun, pretending to eat, was living a life filled with struggle. Yet she spoke with so much calmness and hope. He reached into his pocket and took out a small paper bag from the bakery he had visited earlier. "Would you like to share this with me?" he asked. "It's just some sandwiches and fruit." The girl's eyes widened, but she shook her head politely. "No, sir. It's okay. You should eat." "I'm fine," he smiled gently. "Please, I'd really like some company. Food tastes better when shared." After a moment, she nodded slowly. He placed the food in front of her and watched as she took a small bite, her eyes lighting up as if it were the best meal in the world. "Thank you," she whispered. "Grandma always says kind people are sent by angels." The man chuckled softly. "Maybe she's right," he said, though deep inside he was thinking, maybe this little girl is the angel. They sat together for a while, talking about small things, Calmer the park, the flowers, her favorite stories. She told him how she missed her mother's laughter, and how she wished she could buy her grandma medicine. Every sentence felt like a quiet plea for help, though she never asked for anything. She wasn't begging. She was just sharing her truth. Before she left, she carefully wrapped one sandwich in a napkin. "This one's for Grandma," she said with a smile. The man nodded, feeling his eyes burn. "You're a good girl," he said softly. "What's your name?" She told him her name, simple, sweet, and pure. He repeated it quietly as if memorizing it. "Will you come here tomorrow?" he asked. "Yes," she said, smiling. "I always come when the sun is warm. It makes me feel close to Mama." As she walked away, carrying the sandwich in her small hands, the man stayed seated for a long time. The park around him seemed quieter than usual. He looked up at the sky and took a deep breath. For years he had built his empire, earning more money than he could ever spend. But in that moment none of it mattered. What mattered was that a little girl somewhere was praying for food and medicine, things he could easily provide. He made a silent promise right there. He would find a way to help her and her grandmother. Not out of pity, but out of respect for her strength, her love, and her faith. He didn't know it yet, but that small act of kindness would soon change both of their lives forever. The next day the man returned to the park even earlier than before. He felt restless all morning, replaying the little girl's words in his mind. Her small voice, her calm smile, the way she talked about her mother and grandmother. It had all stayed with him. He didn't know why, but something deep inside told him this meeting wasn't by chance. He brought a small basket with him that day, some sandwiches, fruit, and a few bottles of milk. As he sat on the same bench, he waited patiently, watching the sunlight move through the trees. Finally, he saw her again. The same small figure walking slowly toward the tree, carrying her old cloth in a little bag. She smiled when she saw him. "You came again," she said happily. He smiled back. "Of course. I told you I'd be here. And I brought some food for our picnic today." Her eyes lit up and she helped him spread the cloth on the grass. Together they unpacked the basket. For the first time, the empty plates on her picnic cloth were filled, not just with food but with warmth and laughter. As they ate, the man gently asked about her life. The girl told him more about her grandmother, who was very sick and could barely walk. They lived in a small, broken house near the train station. The girl tried to take care of everything, cleaning, cooking, and sometimes collecting bottles to earn a few coins. He listened silently, every word sinking deeper into his heart. She spoke so innocently, without complaint, as if hardship was something normal. It amazed him how someone so young could carry so much pain and still smile so brightly. When they finished eating, the man asked softly, "Would it be all right if I came to visit your grandmother? I'd like to meet her." The girl looked unsure at first. "She doesn't like strangers," she said, "but if you bring the same kindness, I think she will." He nodded with a gentle smile. "Then I'll make sure to bring kindness with me." Later that afternoon, he followed her quietly as she led the way through narrow streets and dusty lanes. The neighborhood changed quickly. Tall buildings faded into old, crumbling houses with broken roofs and cracked walls. The smell of smoke and dust filled the air. Finally, they stopped in front of a small, half-broken wooden door. The girl pushed it open gently. Inside, the house was dark and cold. A thin curtain hung near the window and a small lamp flickered on the table. An elderly woman lay on a bed in the corner, her face pale and tired. She looked up as the girl entered. "Grandma, I brought a friend," the little girl said softly. "He helped me in the park." The old woman smiled faintly and nodded. "That's kind of you, sir. We don't have many visitors here." The man walked closer, placing a small bag of groceries on the table. "It's nothing," he said humbly. "Your granddaughter is a wonderful child. She reminds me of what true strength looks like." The grandmother's eyes softened. "She's my only reason to keep breathing," she whispered. "Since her mother passed away, this child has done everything for me. She never complains, never asks for much. She just tries to make life look beautiful, even when there's nothing left." The man felt his chest tighten. He looked around the house and there were barely any belongings. Just a few old dishes, a torn blanket, and some faded photos on the wall. One of the pictures caught his eye. A young woman standing beside a tree, smiling brightly. She looked familiar somehow, but he couldn't place her face. He asked gently, "Is that her mother?" The old woman nodded slowly. "Yes, she was full of dreams. She used to work for a kind family once. She believed good people still existed in this world. But after she got sick, everything changed. We lost her too soon." The man stayed quiet. Something about the woman's words made his heart beat faster, as if there was more to the story than she knew. He glanced once more at the picture, trying to remember where he had seen that face before. But his mind drew a blank. Before leaving, he promised the grandmother he'd return with medicine and food. She thanked him softly, tears glimmering in her tired eyes. As he stepped outside, the little girl ran up to him. "Thank you for helping Grandma," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "You're the only one who ever cared." The man knelt down and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to thank me. You've already taught me more than I can ever give back." She smiled, then waved goodbye as he walked away. But deep inside he felt a strange heaviness, like something important was waiting to be uncovered. That night he couldn't sleep again. He kept staring at the photograph he had taken with his phone, the one of the young mother. The more he looked at it, the more he felt like he had seen her before. He searched through his old memories, faces of people he once worked with, people he helped, people he lost. And then, somewhere in the quiet of the night, it hit him. That face, the woman in the picture, it was not a stranger. She had once worked for his company many years ago. He remembered her clearly now, a kind, hard-working woman who had suddenly stopped coming to work. He had never known what happened to her after that. He sat there, stunned, holding his head in disbelief. The little girl's mother had once been part of his own world, and he had never even noticed when her life fell apart. Tears filled his eyes as guilt washed over him. Fate had brought him to that park for a reason. The girl he met wasn't just a stranger. She was a reminder of a truth he had long forgotten, that even small acts of kindness can heal the deepest wounds, and sometimes the people we're meant to help have been connected to us all along. The following morning, the man woke up with a sense of urgency. He could not stop thinking about the little girl and her grandmother. More than that, he couldn't forget the photograph of the girl's mother and the realization that she had once been connected to his world. He knew he had to act, not just out of guilt, but out of care for the family that had suffered silently for so long. He returned to the small house near the train station, carrying medicine, groceries, and some warm blankets. When the little girl opened the door and saw him, her eyes widened in surprise and joy. "You came again," she said, almost as if she could not believe it. "I promised I'd return," he said softly, smiling. "And today I've brought a few things for both of you." The grandmother tried to hide her emotions, but tears welled up in her eyes as she accepted the medicines and food. She whispered a quiet, "Thank you," while the little girl helped her place the items on the table. They sat together, sharing a simple meal, and the man listened as the grandmother recounted stories of the girl's mother, her kindness, her dreams, and the hard times they faced after illness and loss. The man felt his heart ache. He realized how close he had once been to the mother, and how he had unknowingly let her struggles go unnoticed. Finally, he asked carefully, "Can you tell me more about what happened after she left work?" The grandmother sighed. "She became sick and we had no money for treatment. Everything went downhill quickly. I tried my best, but I could not care for her and my granddaughter both. She fought as hard as she could until she left us." The man's hands clenched slightly. He felt a mix of sorrow and regret. He could not help but think how different things might have been if he had noticed sooner. But now, sitting there with the girl and her grandmother, he knew he had a chance to make a real difference. He smiled gently at the girl. "You are incredibly strong," he said. "You've been taking care of your grandmother, pretending everything is okay and still keeping hope alive. That's not something many people can do." The girl looked down, shyly playing with her fingers. "I just want Grandma to be happy. I want her to be healthy." The man nodded. "And she will be. I promise you that." Over the next few days, he visited them regularly. He brought groceries, medicine, and warm clothing. More importantly, he spent time with the girl, listening to her stories, laughing at her small jokes, and encouraging her to dream again. Slowly, the little girl began to feel the weight of her struggles lifting. She no longer had to pretend that life was normal with empty plates. She had real food, warmth, and someone who cared. For the first time in years, she could focus on reading, drawing, and enjoying her childhood. But the man knew that what she needed most was the truth about her mother's past, the part he had just begun to uncover. He decided to dig deeper, contacting old colleagues and reviewing records from the company where her mother had worked years ago. Piece by piece, the story came together. Her mother had been an honest and hardworking woman who had impressed everyone with her dedication. She had been planning a future for herself and her daughter, but illness struck suddenly. Financial difficulties forced her to leave her job, and eventually, she passed away quietly without anyone noticing her struggle. The man felt a surge of responsibility. He had unknowingly been part of the world her mother had lived in, and now he could use his position to honor her memory. One afternoon, he invited the little girl and her grandmother to a small cafe, a rare treat for them. The girl looked around in awe, never having been in a place like this before. She could not hide her excitement and wonder. "See," he said gently, smiling. "You deserve moments like this, happiness, warmth, and care." The grandmother held his hand quietly. "You have no idea how much this means to us," she whispered. "You've given us hope again." The little girl smiled shyly, her eyes sparkling. "I don't want to forget Mama, but I'm happy too. Thank you for helping us." Days passed, and the man continued visiting the little girl and her grandmother. Each day he brought not only groceries and medicine, but also moments of joy, books for the girl, small gifts, and even trips to the park where their story had begun. Slowly he saw the weight in the girl's eyes lighten. She laughed more freely, spoke with hope, and even began planning her small dreams for the future. One evening, After a quiet afternoon spent reading together, the man felt it was time to reveal the truth he had uncovered about her mother. He gently took the little girl's hand and said, "I've learned something about your mother. Something important." The girl's eyes widened, a mixture of curiosity and apprehension crossing her face. "What is it?" she asked softly. Her grandmother joined them, her face serious but trusting. The man unfolded a few old photographs he had gathered and showed them to the girl. He explained how he had remembered her mother from years ago, her kindness, her dedication, and her dreams. He told them how he had been part of the world her mother had once lived in, how her struggles had gone unnoticed, and how fate had brought him to the park to meet her daughter. The little girl listened silently, tears forming in her eyes. She looked at her grandmother, who held her hand tightly. "Mama, she was amazing," the girl whispered. "I wish I could have known her longer." The man smiled gently. "She was. And now through you, her spirit lives on. You have the same strength and heart she had. She would be proud of you every day." Tears flowed freely down the little girl's face. She clutched the man's hand tightly. I never thought anyone would care like you do," she said softly. "I thought no one would ever notice us." Her grandmother's eyes filled with gratitude. "You've changed everything for us," she said quietly. "You've given us hope again." The man shook his head. "You've given me something too, a reminder of what truly matters. Sometimes in all our wealth and busyness, we forget that the smallest acts of kindness can change lives forever." Watching you pretend to eat with empty plates, that moment stayed with me. It showed me courage, love, and resilience I had almost forgotten existed. From that day on, the man made it his mission to ensure the girl and her grandmother lived with comfort and dignity. He arranged for proper medical care for her grandmother, enrolled the girl in a good school, and even found a small tutor to help her with studies she had missed. Slowly, their lives transformed. The little girl no longer had to pretend in the park. Her plates were filled with real food. Her laughter echoed freely, and she could enjoy the innocence of childhood she had once been denied. Her grandmother grew stronger with medicine and care, and the warmth of family returned to their home, even if it was through the kindness of a man who had once been a stranger. But the biggest change was in the man himself. Meeting the girl and learning her story reminded him of the value of noticing the small, quiet struggles around him. People who suffered in silence, children who smiled through hunger, and families who carried unseen burdens. He realized that wealth and power were meaningless if they weren't used to help those who needed it most. One sunny afternoon, he returned to the park, the place where their journey had begun. The girl ran toward him, her face bright and full of joy. "Look, I made a picnic for real this time," she exclaimed, spreading a cloth filled with real sandwiches, fruits, and cookies. The man knelt beside her, smiling. "It looks perfect," he said, "and it tastes even better because it's shared with love." She laughed, the sound ringing like music in the air. "I'm so happy you found us," she said, hugging him tightly. He hugged her back, his heart full. "No, my dear, I was the one who was found. You showed me what really matters in life." As the sun set that evening, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, the man watched the girl and her grandmother laughing together. He thought about the mother in the photograph, about the note left on empty plates, and about how a small, heartbreaking moment had brought so much love and hope into their lives. He knew that from that day forward, he would never ignore the quiet pain of anyone around him. And for the little girl, the grandmother, and even the memory of her mother, life had finally begun to feel safe, warm, and full of possibilities. Sometimes, he realized, the most extraordinary miracles start with something as simple as noticing a child pretending to eat. And in that quiet, ordinary park, an extraordinary story of hope, love, and compassion had come to life. Weeks turned into months, and the little girl's life had changed completely. The empty plates she once used in the park had been replaced by real meals, laughter, and warmth. She no longer had to pretend, and she could eat, play, and dream freely. Her grandmother, once frail and sick, now moved around their home with more strength. The medicine and care provided by the man had given her energy, and the love from the girl and their new supporter filled their days with hope. The house, though small, felt alive with joy. The little girl had even helped decorate it with drawings and flowers she collected from the park, a mix of memories and new beginnings. The man, who had first noticed her pretending to eat with empty plates, continued to visit them regularly. But now he was not just a visitor, he was part of their lives. He had enrolled the girl in a good school, hired tutors to help her catch up on studies, and even arranged small trips to the city's library and museum. Every visit was filled with curiosity and learning, and she blossomed into a confident, happy child. One afternoon, as they sat together in the park where everything had begun, the girl turned to him and asked, "Do you think Mama would be proud of me?" The man smiled warmly. "I know she would," he said. "She would be proud of your strength, your kindness, and how you never gave up on your grandmother. She would be proud of the person you are becoming." The girl hugged him tightly, and for the first time she felt completely safe. She didn't have to hide her struggles or pretend anymore. She had real friends, love, and security. Her grandmother watched silently, her eyes filled with tears of gratitude. "You didn't just help us with food or money," she said softly to the man. "You gave us dignity, hope, and a reason to smile again." The man shook his head. "No, you gave me something too," he said. "You reminded me of what really matters in life: love, compassion, and noticing the struggles of those around us. Meeting your daughter changed me forever." As the sun set, painting the sky with gold and pink, the little girl spread a blanket in the park, setting real sandwiches, fruit, and cookies on it. This time it wasn't pretend. She smiled brightly at her grandmother and the man. "Let's have a picnic," she exclaimed. They laughed together, enjoying the meal, the moment, and each other's company. The empty plates were gone, replaced by full plates, warmth, and the promise of a better future. In the weeks and months that followed, the man continued to help the family, ensuring the little girl had opportunities to grow, learn, and dream. He also shared their story quietly with others, not for fame, but to inspire people to notice the small struggles around them, to act with kindness, and to make a difference when they can. And sometimes late at night, when the little girl looked at the photograph of her mother on the wall, she no longer felt sadness alone. She felt pride, love, and connection, knowing that someone had noticed her pain, cared, and helped her and her grandmother build a life filled with hope. The little girl who once pretended to eat with empty plates had taught a billionaire, and everyone who would hear her story, that the smallest acts of love and attention could create miracles. From that day forward, the girl, her grandmother, and the man lived a life full of laughter, learning, and love. A life that was once unimaginable but now possible because of compassion, courage, and the choice to care. The park, the empty plates, and the note were no longer symbols of sadness. They had become symbols of change, hope, and the extraordinary power of human kindness. And so the story ended. Not with despair, but with a life transformed, hearts healed, and the knowledge that sometimes noticing a child pretending to eat could change the world for everyone involved.